Good day, leaders. I'm Kurt Schmidt, president at Foundry, and I'm excited to be here with you today because I have got a good friend of mine, Wes, who's going to be joining us, and he's got an amazing entrepreneurial journey and not just past, but present and future. We're going to be talking about the tools that he does, the entrepreneurial junior journey. I think you're really going to like it. He's a great guy. You're going to really enjoy it. And before we get started, I do want to mention the Little Book of Networking is available now. So if you want to get better at networking, not only for job search, but maybe for business development, it's been getting great reviews. So I would definitely go and check it out. All right, let's jump in. And the first thing I want to talk about is I met Wes via his through his tool, Sales Connector, which we're going to be talking about a little bit today, which I think is a fantastic tool that everybody needs to check out. And there will be links in the description on how you can do so. So let's talk to Wes. Wes, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
I'm so excited you're here. So Wes, tell me a little bit about the work you do these days. I know you have a couple of frying pans in the fire. Tell me about those things.
Yeah. I've always had frying pans in the fire, so to say. There's always things you're trying to work on, especially in the tech world. Everything's changing fast. My background is marketing. My background is entrepreneurship. My background is building tools. That's something I found myself doing back when I was in college. And to this day, kind of finding things to make life more efficient, especially using internet, using technology. I have a digital agency called Roll Digital. And so we do web design, web development, and we have a team, we have clients for that. But the problem of having a standard service-based business like Roll Digital is it's a service-based business, and service-based business are great, and some people crush it at doing those, but you're basically selling your time and it's hard to scale. And I kind of been doing this for long enough, right? I wanted to build a business I could scale a little bit easier at the end. So we built Sales Connector. Kind of one thing we noticed a trend with all of our clients, everybody needs more sales. Everybody needs,
Yeah.
to get in front of the right people more
Yep.
often, having the right conversations. And so I noticed out of like the 12 clients that I currently had at the time, if I wanted to build one thing that could service all 12, if I could build a product that could help make more people enter the door, come to the table, have that conversation with them, I could probably latch on all 12 clients with one product. And that was the genesis of Sales Connector at the time.
That's great.
Yeah.
So did you know when you're talking about how you've solved problems? I mean, has it been a lot of digital? Does that transcend into the analog world at all? Are you an analog note taker? You're a post-it note guy? How do you keep track of your personal and family tasks?
I appreciate it. That's a good question too. Yeah, everything's connected, right? As much as we wish some things are disconnected, it all connects at some point and level, and it's all important for us to address and identify. Um, I am much more of a scattered thinker. Some people are organized thinkers, and I'm impressed with those people. And I look at them with envy. People that do have their notes all down and everything color coordinated, posted notes that kind of make sense of what's going on. I'm constantly like, I'll go in somewhere and I'll just kind of make it kind of messy, but try to uncover the gems that are in there. And as soon as it kind of gets a little boring, I'll turn over to another mess and messy and keep on going through the process. That's where you need a good team behind you, really, in any business that you're in. Not there's some people I've only met a few in my career that are pretty much good at everything. Most of us are good at one, two, three things in the process. And you just need to understand that, recognize that, and build a team behind you that can do that. So if you're really good at uncovering kind of opportunities in a mess, that's great. But then you're going to need people that can actually follow through and turn the mess or the discoveries you found into a viable business. And that's always been my trend too. Finding the right people. The success is not about one person; it's about the team that you put together. And so all my businesses so far, I've been fortunate to build lots of other people that are growing up in their careers and a lot of friendships along the way too. So I'll put you in that bucket too. So 10 years from now, we'll look back at this day and we'll talk about like the things we've accomplished in the last 10 years since from today on. So
Yeah. What about you? So you talk about building a good team, and if I'm a solopreneur, maybe I'm just getting started. Over the last few years, the idea of virtual assistants and there's lots of automated tools in things. Which way do you lean? Like if you were coaching a solopreneur, a solo consultant, somebody who's trying to grow their business and they're running out of time for organization, or maybe they're like you and they're more of a scattered thinker, have what would your suggestion be? Invest more in automation tools, maybe look into virtual assistants. Like, what would you advise?
I mean, there's different seasons where different things are important. I love
Mm,
tools. I mean, I geek out on them, but partially just my career, how it's gone down there is as I look at tools, I'm learning something that I can apply not just for myself, but to my clients too. And always thinking, let's say, if I'm good at this, what value is that going to bring? So I tend not to, let's say, buy like one calendar tool that's going to just make my appointments great for me. That's okay. But I'm always looking at calendar tools like what's a calendar tool that I feel like I could replicate and solve a problem for 100 people with. So anytime I test a tool, it goes well beyond just me testing it for myself. But that's
mhm.
my mindset. Different than somebody who has maybe just one problem to solve and they're really trying to solve the problem for themselves. Um, One thing, like where I am today, and this is something I feel like that's kind of bougie, and I hadn't had this in other business, but I do have now like one or two people that are constantly reading all of my emails and they're putting appointments on my calendar for me, and that just like it's a game changer once you kind of can have that. Now I feel like it's a luxury of kind of a little bit more established success, I guess it might be the general word to use for that, but I'm not that good at that. Emails slip through the cracks all the time. And when you have somebody that can pick up things that you're not good at, whether that's your bookkeeping, whether that's, I don't know, organization around the office, whether that's, your creative, media, digital marketing, other things on that side. If you find the right people, it's good. Um, there's so many people out there, so you can find that person that can solve that problem for you. But, uh, for sure, I'd put on my list. I know you didn't quite ask for this one, but a calendar booking tool, it's so important nowadays because I feel like networking is important and making it easy for the other person to kind of find a time on there. That's great. Um, I wouldn't go anywhere without that tool. I'm trying to think of some other tools, like a CRM platform is really important just to organize your contacts in that process.
Yeah,
Finding maybe other tools that are really important for your organization, but just identifying them, finding good ones. There's tons of them out there now.
that makes sense. So I want to talk about Sales Connector. What was the sort of genesis of this? Where, obviously, like we talked about, you like to build tools to solve things. Obviously, this thing came from all these different gaps you were seeing all over the place, and you were kind of putting together. What was the genesis of this? Like, where what? This isn't just going to be an idea anymore. I'm going to make a real thing. Like, tell me about that story.
Yeah. I appreciate that. That's a good question. So that goes back to like around 2018. I did have my digital agency, Roll Digital. It's still active today, but again, getting frustrated with the idea that scaling a digital agency in its traditional form is hard. I really wanted to figure out what could I productize, what could I offer that could be cross and transcend across all 12 of my clients. So I started looking at what tools are out there. What's like, I tend not to be a person that invents a wheel from scratch. There's very few people on the planet that are good at that. And kudos to them too. If you can build something that no one's thought of, that's impressive. Usually we're kind of a little bit on the second tier adopters of things. And so I was looking at what tools were available and I was considering quite a few different options to go down. But one thing I noticed is LinkedIn marketing is something that's much needed and it's kind of not it's a fuzzy place to find people that can do a good job. A lot of people promise a lot and there were a few tools out there that said they could deliver a lot, but when you test them, most were clunky, most didn't solve problems. It didn't seem like there was big players in that space. And I felt like there was an opportunity for us to help our clients better utilize LinkedIn to achieve the goals that they're trying to achieve. Now, whether it's a B2C play, a B2B play, a business to enterprise, partnerships, finding investors, the list goes on and on. Most of the time, LinkedIn is an avenue to open that door for them. And it's underutilized. If you talk to, 50 companies today and you really dive deep into how well they're using LinkedIn, the potential is here and their use case of how they're using it's down here. And so finding a way, a system to kind of understand what that gap is, understanding what we could kind of build that'll like actually head them in that direction. We'll never get to 100%, but I feel like we can kind of take somebody who's utilizing LinkedIn at a 5, 10% range and get them to like 70, 80% of that. And, we're still trying to make our tool better and better to get you to maybe to 90, 95, as close to 100 as possible. But that change makes such an impact for our clients. And once I saw that in a short amount of time, so 2019, we launched our product and we had a team. There's lots of evolutions that have happened in the last 4 years inside of what we built. But already with our first few clients, we just saw like, man, there's so many success stories, so many success stories. We've probably worked with about 2,000 clients since just in that. And, you know, um, yeah, there's, I probably won't mention names of specific people on this one, but one of these guys, a friend of mine, owned a business selling a product. And I didn't know if we even had have an opportunity to help him sell his product. It was treadmills. It was treadmills that you'd use for with virtual reality headsets,
Oh,
and he was
cool.
curious if LinkedIn would be a place to help him sell those. And I was thinking like, I really don't know, but let's give it a shot. Let's try our software. Let's try our system. Let's see what we can do. We can see if we can open these doors for you. And it people were just gravitating to wanting to respond and connect and engage the right people, big organizations. We're talking government agencies, Fortune 100 companies, all of them were responding well. And by like a couple months into it, we were booking close to 10 to 12 meetings a day for him. And 1 out of every 4 meetings, he'd actually closes in a sale. So it was just busy, and we get on the call a couple months later, and he started laughing with me, and he goes like, "Wes, you've changed my life." And he goes, "Not in a good way, look," and he pulls out a thing of peanut butter,
Not in a good way.
all I can eat all day. I don't have time to do any lunch or anything like that. And he takes a scoop of peanut butter, puts it back behind his computer screen, and goes on. So at that point, like a little aha, like, okay, this is something. There's a lot of value. If people use LinkedIn well, like floodgates start to come in. Not always. I don't want to overpromise things, but in general, if it's better utilized, it opens up doors. And that for me is fun. I could talk for days about this stuff. So I'll let you keep
Well,
on guiding
and
the
so did the intent, the audience change as the product grew? Did you have like when you first launched it, like this is gonna be the buyer of this tool, and over time has that changed or expanded and grown?
Yeah. So one piece of advice, maybe to your listeners that are different stages of their careers and their businesses out there. Today, like actually this office that I'm in, it's part of a co-working space. I have a friend who owns a co-working space. I rent an office from him. So in the same building, probably within, 100, 200 feet from where I'm sitting right now, there might be owners of about 50 businesses and they're just sitting doing their thing on their computers. And when I go to grab coffee, I'm talking to them. When I just go sit out in the lobby, I'm talking to them. My first 20 clients came from this space. And it's an easy place for you to get other people that are willing to try things. You might not get, let's say, your best clients lifetime. You might not get the highest paying clients, but it's a great place to kind of get get started. As opposed to, I know the idea of remote working is something that's prevalent now. And you could work from home and you can hang out with your dog and you can kind of look in your backyard if you want to, but you're not going to get an opportunity like you can in the co-working space. I'd highly recommend it. For a business that needs clients, it's a great place to get your first beta testers and users into the system. And so like, honestly, it was anyone who was willing to pay me a few $100s was kind of, I was ready to take. Um, I still am a believer. Now, I know at some point different people are going to preach different sides of this equation, like know your audience, find your ideal target audience, go after your prospects that you want to go for. I still like more of the Swiss Army knife thing. Like, tell me your problem, my Swiss Army knife can solve it for you approach. And so almost anyone that starts telling their story, I'll listen to their story for a while. And then afterwards, I go, you know what? I think this is how I would use my system to solve your problem.
Mm.
And it could something like an elementary school teacher. That's exaggerating, but it could possibly, I could solve all the way to like, I don't know, the FDA is trying to come up with a solution for how to solve something to get drugs implemented faster across the nation. I do feel like LinkedIn can play a part of almost any of these ecosystems. We do have clients on board that would people would kind of scratch their head, goes like, why would that client ever want to use a service like yours? But it really comes down to strategy. Like, if you think about it, really, like LinkedIn, it's just people and people connecting to people. And if there's a way that you can strategize, hey, if you could connect to like 30, 40, 50 new people every day and have good conversations with them, could you reap rewards? Could that be valuable to you? So whether you own a hair salon, a swimming pool building company, a solar company, or an architecture firm or a legal firm or consulting business, um, all of those pretty much, reaching out to more people, um, it can be significant benefit to their business. And that propels me. It makes me excited. Like at the end,
Yeah,
I,
that is
I
cool.
love helper. Yeah.
I love that. So there's obviously LinkedIn is really known for B2B, right?
Yeah.
And um, let's say, I am a business and I know I'm underutilizing LinkedIn, maybe, or maybe I even got the wrong idea because I see a lot of businesses think that this is just a place for me to share case studies and customer success stories, and that's all I need to do, and then I'm good. But I'm not really seeing a lot of ROI, so I don't put a lot of effort into LinkedIn. How do you usually coach people on how their mindset should be around LinkedIn for actual like ROI and versus just kind of flexing about their business a bit?
Yeah. And there's a lot of coaching and education involved in what we do, and I understand that. And our business has changed from a strict SaaS to more of a SWAS, is what we call it. A SWAS being a software with a service. So a software by itself doesn't really solve problems. You kind of need to have just education and strategy and coaching for you to be successful in this. And that's something that set us apart in the last 4 years of building this, is just
Well, and it's
educating people on
natural
the
for you
software.
because you come from a service background with the agency too, right? So then was it
Yeah.
easy to it wasn't you had to wedge it in, right?
Yeah. It also, it makes you feel good. There's some businesses that accept maybe, let's say, I don't know, a high churn and a high dissatisfaction rate, but they're profitable and they just keep on moving forward and generating money. My heart kind of struggles with that type of business. Like if I know a large percentage of my clients or people that I'm working with are unhappy or aren't getting the success they should have, even if I'm profitable, it doesn't make me feel good. And so in this case right now, we really try to have a highest percentage of all of our clients having the highest amount of success possible. And even at a detriment sometimes to my business, I try to keep that as my model of what we do. And in the end, you can just talk to like, if we have 100 clients and you talk to like 95 of them, they're going to be highly happy with what they're getting. And that's because they're coached well, they're trained well on how to use it. So, okay, going back to your question, great questions. I really am loving these. Like, this is really neat. I'm not just saying it's flattery, but you know your stuff, thinking well, and I like thinking on these lines. Um, and we're constantly evolving too. So these questions can help the next iteration of our software in the process. So I'm all for it.
Awesome.
Um, People tend to use LinkedIn, like you said, they post things, they comment on things, they show off kind of data. Sometimes it's a little bit more viral, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they post something that gets 0 views, sometimes it gets thousands of views. And they determine that as success. And that's fine, but views don't turn into dollars really at the end of the day. You really need to get more business, more sales for yourself. If that's what you're going for. And that's what most of us are. That's the most generic use case is I just want more people buying my product, buying from me and becoming customers on my side. Um, and most of the time that comes through. And what I've seen, it's like instead of waiting, posting stuff and hoping the right people find you, the ones that do find you, oftentimes they have ulterior motives. And that's just what I've seen. And I'm on the other side, so I know this game pretty well, right?
Sure.
If you're reaching out to somebody, whether it's interacting with their post or interacting with their content, a lot of times that person has ulterior motives and they're trying to reach out to you with the intention to sell you something else. Um, and sometimes I compare it to like all right, this is a different problem that I'm solving here. But some people say, like, I don't use LinkedIn too much anymore. I get spammed on LinkedIn way too often. Right. And I consider it like, let's say if I'm throwing a party at my house and I really want good people to be at the party at my house, I can kind of put up, I don't know, make my house nice and just wait for the door and try to let everybody in the door that kind of is waiting at the door. And I think that's how sometimes we do LinkedIn. We just wait for people to send us invitations to connect and we just click accept across the board. Most of the people that are knocking on my door are salesmen, either disguised as salesmen, to be honest. And they're trying to come in to my LinkedIn first degree network to try to sell me something. And I kinda know that, and I know if I click accept, so I have thousands of unaccepted connection requests right now, and I've always had thousands and thousands, and some people are like, "Why don't you just accept them?" Well, I know I'll get spammed over time, and
Yeah.
that's what's happened.
It's just
So
a
the flip
distraction.
side, yes, is what we teach our people, don't wait for them to kinda knock on your door to come in, go to their door and knock on their door yourself and see if they'll let you in, invite them this way. And those people usually don't have a second intention. They didn't reach out to you intent. They had no reason other than you reaching out to them first. Find them by their title, by their industry, by their seniority, by their years in business, but geography, whatever is important to you, and start bringing them into your first degree network. They're not ones that will spam you for them. So I have 27,000 connections on LinkedIn. Most days I don't get any spam at all. And all my conversations are ones that I want to have that were generated by myself and that are
Okay.
moving in the direction of where I need them to go. So it is very possible. LinkedIn is not a messy network with a lot of spam. It is if we kind of just open the door to let anyone in. But as long as you start being intentional on that side, it makes a difference. And those conversations, they do turn into ROI, like you said. Like once you start talking to the right people, and trying to get people from LinkedIn to off of LinkedIn is kind of where the magic happens. Like these type of calls with new people will eventually generate in business for you.
Yeah, I would say, I'd love to hear your perspective, Wes, on how I should be doing that reach out because some of the spam I get is just a simple, "Hey, I'd love to connect with you." And then the next message, as soon as I hit accept, is 20 pages long of like, "Hey, we'd love for you to buy into this investment opportunity. And here's a link to a webinar that's coming in a week. And then here's a form and a survey to fill out on tell us all the things you're interested in, why you want to do this." I'm like, whoa, like, and I usually respond to those and I just say, does this work for you? What's your conversion rate with these things? And every once in a while, I'll get like a real person that responds and tells me, like, oh, we set up like a couple meetings a week or so, but it's a lot of that, right? And I learned a long time ago, like I treat LinkedIn messaging like just like you said, like a party, like how I'm actually talking to human beings, like how I would introduce myself in a crowded room or those sorts of things. I'd love to get your take, Wes, on what's your, for somebody that's like, well, I don't want to do that because they're going to think I'm spam or I don't want to add to more spam or, what's your strategy? What's your mindset around that? How would you advise people in their initial reach outs?
Yeah. I appreciate you sharing that. And I think what you're saying is a concern that we've seen from a lot of our clients and customers and people
Okay.
we talk to. That's real common. And the thought process of I don't want to be one more person doing that. I don't like it when it's done to me. I don't want to do it to other people. And we're all for that. I feel like LinkedIn's a great place for relationship building. And relationship building is kind of, you said, it's like how you treat people organically at a party that you're hosting yourself or, someone else's. You want to generally talk to people. And at first, like our suggestion always is to try to get them to talk about themselves first. And sometimes people like the argument that I see that people use a lot is like offer them value to begin with. Like say, here's a link to article that I wrote that has some numbers on marketing data for 2024. Um, I don't feel like personally, and we can always A/B test this at some point. The world isn't lacking more information on more data, on more stats, on more tools. But we're missing a lot in these years, more relationships and people that care about us. I feel like that's kind of what we're missing. So somebody reached out to me and said, here's a link, to trending data that's coming up for the next 5 years. And they feel like in their heart, look, I'm offering Wes value. Of course, she's going to love me. I go to YouTube and I have a list of like 50 AI curated articles and videos that are also have similar content to this point. I don't need, 10 more from people, but if someone says something like, Wes, it looks like you went to Cal Poly and within 6 months of graduating, you started a business that had 50 employees. How did you do that? That question cuts through the noise immediately. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, like, whoa, this guy wants to know about my story. He wants to, and I'm gonna smile and say something. Well, thanks for noticing that. It was actually a pretty big accomplishment. I was in the beginning of the dot-com
Yeah.
boom, and that just propelled my business. And now I have rapport built for this person. And typically what I'd still tell the person if he's trying to use our strategy on that side is to keep the conversation at that level for like 2, 3, 4 more touch points. Ask another question, ask another question. And then after a few more questions are asked, then you kind of start trying to see if there's overlap of interest. And so if the person's business is in, I don't know, leasing cars or something like that, maybe then just kind of say, do you provide any kind of vehicles for your employees? And I'm much more prone to actually like consider that question and answer it in a positive way if it's true after he asks a few questions about myself first. And then at that point, if you notice any positivity, he could probably push that to saying, "Well, why don't we just get on the call? I'd love to share about how my business works and what we're able to provide people. And I'd love to learn way more about what you did since Cal Poly and the other businesses you started ever since." And I'm gonna take that with a smile. Um, the same method that we use, that I use personally, and we try to coach for our clients. I've used to book over 3,000 meetings. I'm probably the number is almost 4,000 at this point. Um, and I would say, sometimes people also argue like, Wes, like if you're just taking that many meetings, they can't be good. 80, 90% of them, I walk away feeling like that was just a really good use of my time. That was an hour well spent. I ended up talking to somebody that was really interesting. I would have never had a chance to meet them otherwise.
Yep.
So yeah, it can work out really well despite people maybe having doubts sometimes. Just there are really good people on LinkedIn and you get opportunities to meet with them if you engage with them well, if you use that friendship
Yeah.
relationship first focus.
Well, and I think that's the key. What you just said there is that if you have a transactional mindset, right? If you're like, I need to sell X amount of widgets by the end of the quarter, you're not going to have a ton of success on LinkedIn because it is a relationship tool. You're better off going spending your money on search ads or something
Yeah.
because you're going to get more response because it's a more transactional sort of audience there, and you're not going to get that with LinkedIn. And here's, I mean, my tip for people when they ask me like, what is that first message you send it? My first message that gets me like a really high percentage of acceptance is just, hey, I'd love to connect with you. I know we don't know each other, but a relationship has to start somewhere. And boom, that's it. That's all I send, and people accept like you wouldn't believe. It's awesome. And then the next message is usually something like, "Hey, thanks for connecting. I'm glad that we'll be able to share with each other. I just wanted to know, have you thought about X at all this for this year? Is this something on your mind for this year?" And
Mhm.
if not, don't bother responding. You don't need to reply or anything. Just wanted to know. And if the people who respond like, "Yeah, actually, I have been thinking about growing my LinkedIn this year," blah, 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 then I can engage in a conversation with them. If they don't reply or they say, "No, I haven't thought about it," then I just leave them alone. But now they're connected, and then they'll see me posting content around these subjects, these ideas. So if the timing does become right in the future, then I'm usually the top of mind person that they're reaching out to. So to me, I feel like people can overcomplicate it, but you called it out the best is that you actually have to do it and you have to be intentional and you have to be consistent. And I
Yeah.
think that's one thing I love about the tool that you've built is that it forces me to be consistent when I am sometimes I could be a little scatterbrained, like you mentioned.
Yeah. It It's like a lot of things in life, but everything you're saying is like spot on. And just to your audience here too, that nugget of what you say in your connection request message, it's golden. That's a valuable piece of advice you just gave your listeners. Yes, I think that one would cut through the noise and have a high success rate. And we're always trying to learn and iterate based on that. Um, Going down a quick rabbit trail, like on this one, I think that's something that also has made us better over time. And I didn't when I built this, I thought I was just building a tool and the tool would have some, just ability to do things for certain people and certain actions and whatnot. But over time, we're actually collecting a lot of data, just seeing insights of what works and doesn't work. And we're seeing like trends that at one point used to work and today they're not getting the high success rate they are. And new trends kick in that are getting a higher success rate. And so we're able to kind of constantly iterate. So when clients come on board and they do this strategy session, they do have an onboarding session with us, we're able to kind of pull up, this is currently in the last 6 months, these are the copies that actually have worked the best. These are kind of the target audience that seems to work best. This is a search filter that once we add this, you're going to get like a 10% higher connection acceptance rate with this search filter. So it's fun. Like sometimes I say it's like driving across town as opposed to just knowledge from point A to point B, which is important, but I actually have a satellite view because I'm seeing all the cars driving down these streets. And you can make such a more informed decision when you have that perspective on things in the
Yeah.
process. And so that's what we're able to kind of do for a lot of our clients. But that conversational piece is so important, trying to build, relationships that are genuine. Um, and I'll segue into one point real quick here too. Sometimes people think like, oh, I'll get banned or blocked. I mean, there's different things out there, and I won't dive too far into the whole process. But ultimately, LinkedIn wants happy people that are happy with others and engaging in a positive fashion. And that's what I've seen as far as the biggest trend is as soon as you start getting complaints about what you're doing on LinkedIn, whether you're just doing cut and paste jobs on LinkedIn, whether you're actually typing in 20 messages to your 20, new followers and they all complain about what you wrote, that will get you in trouble in their system.
Yeah.
But if you write 20 messages and those 20 messages are well received and engaged and people are interacting well and kind of showing a positive kind of interest in what you're doing, like, that tends to kinda almost get their favor, and they say, "Keep on going forward. You're adding value to our system." So, that for us is really important too, making sure that what you're writing at the end doesn't get a negative response rate, but it's getting a positive response rate, and we say, "Let's put some more fuel on this fire. Let's move it forward faster."
Yeah, well, that's what's key is that what I love about what you've built is exactly that because there's lots of tools out there that will help me automate things, but there's no context to it. It's like just put in here whatever and dump in here whatever and send as many as you want and there's no guardrails or things that are guiding you so you can get into LinkedIn jail really fast. And with using those things because they just hope that you know what you're doing, or they don't care. I should say maybe they don't even hope. They just don't care. They're like, whatever, you bought the tool, you know. And so, if you shoot yourself in the foot, then that's not my responsibility. And I see this with some of the bigger sales tools out there, right? Like the Zoom Infos and Apollos of the world, where email marketing and these sorts of things. Like I can certainly automate the crap out of it, but if there was some way where they could be doing exactly what you're talking about and relaying information back to me, and this is the type of stuff, these are the types of messages we're seeing work versus just volume, that's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you nailed it there, and both those points are really important too. Like the guardrails about telling people like how to do it. We have so many of our clients that have kind of used other systems in the past, and they come in with a strong opinion saying like, "Oh, it doesn't work. We tried
It
something like
doesn't
this
work. Yeah, right.
before. It's not going to make a difference. It's not going to impact things." And then if we just dive, just it doesn't even take too many layers deep. Let me just look at your copy. Let's look at what you did. Let's look at your profile. Let's look at your target audience. There's room to improve in all those, and as soon as those get improved, the success rate just goes way up, and, it's fun to see that. We've seen people that were getting like, 5, 10%, success rate in LinkedIn to go to almost a 50% connection acceptance rate, as high as an 80% conversation rate, a high percentage booking rate, and, so many success stories in there when you start optimizing for things. One thing I tell your listener audience too on LinkedIn, a trend that I see, at 2018 was kind of the end of it, and now it's kind of changed. On LinkedIn, people tend to use their headline just to kind of say their current job title, and a lot of
Yep.
times their job title, like, it's one thing if like, I'm CEO of Twitter, that's pretty cool. You could probably get away with that, but most of us don't have that notoriety to say something that big. And so instead of saying like, I'm a sales rep for, Acme Corporation, that's not going to get you meetings. That's not going to get you connections. You want to put personality and a lot of buzz in there, for a lot of things you're doing. So, you're an avid world traveler, listened to over 400 hours of TED Talks. Aspiring book writer. You can kind of go a long ways to take just your gut and your feelings to put something really interesting in there. And, case in point, we tried just to test this theory out. I took my oldest son who just turned 16 and we made a LinkedIn account for him and he's never really had a job, but we kind of put in some buzzwords about like an aspiring entrepreneur and some other things, like believer in good communication and some things that just stand true to him on his LinkedIn account. And today, the amount of messages and meetings, and connections he's making inside LinkedIn, it's better than some people that have been, 10, 15 years in an industry. It just because you have an opportunity to shine if you kind of just display yourself as somebody that would be interesting to talk to. So I would just tell everyone, revisit your LinkedIn profile and just make it where you think that, like, say, if you put that in front of 10 people or 100 people, most of them say, you know what? I'd give this guy 15 minutes of my time. I don't feel like I'm gonna
Yeah.
get sold to. He seems interesting enough, or she seems interesting enough. I'm willing to engage. This person seems kind of fun. And so just making that transition on your profile, that's the first place to start. That's what we usually spend about 15 minutes with each of our clients is just kind of looking through that. And without that, no matter if you're reaching out to 1,000 people or 10,000 people, your success rate's gonna be so much lower,
Yeah.
if you look good on LinkedIn to begin with. Um,
Yeah. That's
and
usually
nothing
the same advice I give people that I work with in terms of LinkedIn profile creation is let who you are come out first before what you do.
Mm,
Because if you lead with who you are, people are interested in that, like much more than they are in what you do. It's
yeah,
not to say, but people always think of it like, well, this is like a search engine or things, and I want to make sure I've got all the keywords, Wes. I got to make sure I've got it stuffed with keywords in case somebody's searching for business consultant for manufacturing companies. I want to show up, right?
yeah, yeah. It the keyword part, it's much more who you are goes a long ways. Um, and sometimes so I'll give a little strategy tip here that we do with a lot of our clients. I call this like, the front door approach or a side door approach on things. Especially a lot of things are saturated nowadays. We're all in businesses that have been around for a long time. None of us are doing things that are too new under the sun. And for example, I'll take a use case of like staffing companies. Staffing companies have done very well with our team and our company and Sales Connector. But oftentimes it's not because we tell them, hey, just reach out to companies and tell them that you can help them find people to fill the positions that they're looking for. Like that is saturated. That approach probably won't work too well. And you'll get
Well,
just
and
a
you're a
very
staffing
little.
company, so I would hope that that's what you do. You're
Yeah.
not
You
giving
know,
me
this,
any new information.
um, And so for each of our staffing companies, it's fun when you dig a little bit deeper, you can kind of find a fun little niche or a side way. Because, at the end, probably every company does need to fill new roles, but they're getting tired of people saying, knocking on the door, trying to sell them that service. And so we have one use case, like one guy that's been a client, gosh, pretty much since I started. And not only does he have a real successful staffing company, but he also happens to be the other hats that he wears is multifaceted person. He's on the board of directors for a couple venture capital funds. He's in this angel, company where they just kind of do an angel investing in a lot of companies. And collectively, I think they've invested in over 50 to 100 startups as such. Very connected here in this area where I live. And that's something that he likes. He cares about that. He's passionate about investing in startups and kind of being on the board of directors for these different companies. So when he talks to a company here in the area, instead of leading with the staffing company, he usually leads with, hey, I'm on the board of directors of these venture funds. I'm on these angel investor groups. I'd love to learn more about your business. Now, they're quick to drop their guard and jump into that conversation.
Yeah,
And the
sure.
amount of meetings like that he can book, it's very high. And then you just have to make sure you flow through with that same energy into the meeting. You can't jump and just quickly switch hats. It's a gradual transition. He'll ask questions from that perspective. But then at some point, he'll ask, what are your growth plans for the next 2 years? Are you guys going to be hiring any key people? Like, what's your company up to? They'll often say, yes, we actually are hiring quite a few. This summer we plan on bringing on 20 new, engineers and 10 more executives. And then he can change hats at that point and just say, you know
Yeah.
what? I happen to run one of the most successful staffing companies here in this region. Would you need any help with those roles? That's something I could also possibly do for you. And they're quick to say yes. And so he got in that door and he's in front of lines and he's the one that's actually going to be serving them meals, but he didn't go through the front door. He went through a side door to kind of make to that same spot. I've seen that happen with people that also have podcasts, is a great example of that because, sometimes, your consulting services or other services you offer, if you go direct for that, they're not quick to say yes. But if you kind of say, hey, I'd love to ask you some questions. I have an audience. I have a podcast. I have a book
Yep.
that I'm interviewing for. It opens up a neat door where most people will say yes. And then after you learn about them, you see if it's appropriate. You talk about the other things you also do. And yeah, it tends to be a really neat approach that works really well. And we always encourage our clients to kind of try to find some of those side door approaches, at least to A B test.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that's where I think the strategy and things come in. That's where I do a lot of coaching is to figure out what are those. what are those key things of value you can deliver to people that is not an article, right? Because I get a lot of the spam I get is people delivering homework to me, basically. It's like, go read this article, go check this
Yeah.
thing out, go do this, go to this webinar, go to this thing. And it's like, I don't want homework. Like, why are you giving like I don't want to go and do these things, right? But to your point, if I can deliver something of value that is actually of value, right?
Mhm.
And like I said, like the podcast has been great for me personally because it's been free consulting and coaching for me as a leader of a business for years. It's been great, but it also allows me to passively kind of pitch my company and our services and the other things that I do, and then allows me to then connect my network to those people and show my network more value because it's like, hey, you should meet this person. They do a lot of really cool things that you might be interested in, and you never knew about them or knew that they existed. And so it's this ecosystem that you can build if, but again, it goes back to what you were saying is like the strategy. Why are you doing what you're doing? What sort of impact are you trying to have? And if you don't have that and you're just saying I need to hit a number by the quarter end of the quarter, then LinkedIn probably not going to give you everything you think unless you just do LinkedIn ads. Then maybe that does the something.
Yeah.
I wanted to
I,
ask you
I,
one last question though, because I do want to ask you on the take of uh of LinkedIn content generation, right? So some people think, okay, well, we'll just focus on advertising on LinkedIn. I can invest. I have this chunk of money, Wes, and I can either dump it into advertising or I can dump it into content generation and influence and these sorts of things. Um, where would you advise people to be putting their money in 2024 into LinkedIn?
Mm. um, Ads are competitive. I mean, in general, I would only use ads as a last resort and be very mindful if you're paying for ads on any network that you're getting ROI from it. If you're
Mm,
able to, and typically the saturated businesses aren't going to work to get money through advertising. That's just it's over complicated, over competitive, and it's really hard. I used to have an advertising agency for about 5, 6 years, and you have to know what you're doing. And even, for a few months, you're making money. Then the next few months, you're losing money. And if you're not paying attention to it, you bleed a lot of money before you kind of notice that trend change. Content's fun, but remember, sometimes we get caught up in what's fun versus what's productive. Like, say, if I post a video about my kid saying something funny and I make a little um, truth about business that kind of is tied into that, I might get, 10,000 people to comment on that, and I might feel like, "Gosh, I'm important, I'm popular." And that's what we're seeing a lot in today's society, like, "Oh, I grew this many Instagram followers," or my thing got seen by so many people, and they brag about that, but, like, that's yeah, and that becomes the fuel for wanting them to do more of that, and they do more, and they go, "Oh, this one got so many likes." But I stop and I scratch my head. You need, like, your business, like, how much money did you generate last year with your business? Has that gone like, what's the trend there? Are you getting more and more revenue for yourself? Are you generating more dollars bottom line? I really feel like that comes down to genuine one-on-one, like, relationship building, kinda like that's meaningful relationship. It's different than somebody just looking at your stuff and giving you a double click with, giving you a heart or something like that on that process. And so I would say, like, dive into, like, what meaningful relationships are you looking for in 2024, and try to figure out how you can have those. And there is a huge shift. Like, I never sell inside of LinkedIn. I just feel like that's not the place to try to sell. LinkedIn is just to connect and engage enough to get them to kind of feel comfortable enough to take the next step with you, which is to meet you, whether it's at a coffee shop, whether it's at an event, or whether it's on a Zoom call. And that's where your personality can shine. And the advice I give to everyone, and this is, I double down on this pretty hard. I don't know if anyone does, I mean, I'm sure there's people that do it more than me, but when I get on a call, I really don't think about selling my services. I just think about, let's say, here's a neat person. let me just try to like figure them, understand their problems, cheer for them and where they're at in their journey, care for them and all their struggles that they have. Genuinely, I'll go through my mind and start thinking of my Rolodex of my, hundreds of contacts that I have. If any one of them can be of value to this person, no strings attached. I'm sending connections your way and you're going to get 5, 10, referrals out of this meeting. If I can come up with that many that make sense for you, and only like and even in the first 10 minutes, even 15, 20 minutes, oftentimes someone will start to say, "Wes, no, stop. Tell me about your business. How are you doing? What are you doing?" Um, I try not to take the bait. I try to go like I didn't feel like I dove far enough into knowing you before I want to talk about me. And so I go like, wait, no, 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 wait a minute. Go one more time. You moved to Chicago when your business was 3 years old. Did you buy an office then? Or were you, how did you even make that transition happen? And people ask out of being nice, and they actually really care about sharing about themselves. We all do. I do too. But I just wanna make sure they get that opportunity to feel like they're understood and cared for and valued. And sometimes I won't even, no pitch whatsoever. That's the end of the meeting. I said, "It's really a pleasure meeting you." And then other times I get an opportunity to share, "This is what I'm doing at Sales Connector, and, this is kinda how I see us possibly solving some of the things you talked about, some of those problems." But it's very different than if I started talking about what problem Sales Connector does in the first 5 minutes of the meeting. The
Right.
ability to receive that well and actually engage in that place, it's so much different after you gave them significant space to talk about themselves and you cared for them genuinely. It makes a big difference. So some of the nuggets in there, hopefully your listeners can pull some things out of that, but
That's
that's
fantastic. Wes, I could talk to you all day about LinkedIn. We'll have to do a part 2 here at some
yeah,
point.
I love
We'll do like a mid-year check-in on what's going on this year. Um, so if I want to connect with you, Wes, and I want to learn more about Sales Connector, where is a great place to go and find all the information? Obviously, I hope LinkedIn is a good place to go, right?
LinkedIn's good. You got my name, Wes Lemos. I'm easy to find on there. Um, Also salesconnector.com. That's kind of probably I would say that's the best place to go. And just click book a demo. Our team is growing, but it's still pretty small. Pretty good odds that maybe even I'd be the one be on the call with you. And you'll get a chance just to engage, ask questions, see if there's any advice we can give you on the process. We're happy to do that for you. Salesconnector.com and yeah, just Wes Lemos on LinkedIn are great places to start in that process.
That's awesome. Well, thanks again, Wes, for taking the time. I know you're really busy. I appreciate you sharing insights with everyone here today.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Absolutely. And yeah, anytime you want me back, this has been a lot of fun. I'm happy to share new trends. There's a lot of things about AI that we didn't even touch on that we could talk about next time.
Oh,
I'm
yeah, we're
happy
going to
to.
do that. All
All
right.
right.
Thanks, Wes.
Absolutely. Take care.
All right, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join me. I cannot stress how much I enjoy all my conversations with Wes. And if you enjoyed it, make sure you go and check out salesconnector.com. It's a fantastic tool. I cannot recommend it enough, especially if you're new to LinkedIn automation and you're interested in maybe taking your more manual and copy and paste step to a different level. I cannot recommend it enough. So go and check it out. Before we go, one last recommendation. Well, why book? Why not? Why can't I recommend it? It's my show. I'll recommend it if I want to. Go and check it out. It's on Amazon. Thanks for taking the time to join me. Have a great rest of your week.